Welcome to episode number 7 of Actionable Insights. Today's episode is going to be short and maybe a little bit sweet because we're going to talk about something that I think is super important and something that can transform your relationship as a merchant with the agency that you're working with the developer team that you are working with, in how you communicate with them. So continue listening because I hope you're going to learn some incredible information, some suggestions on how to improve that relationship. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever your favorite podcast platform is. We are there. Today, I'm joined by Mark Lewis from Natalico. He inspired this line of conversation with me with a talk that he gave last year at a conference here in Austin, Texas. And I think it's super important. And basically, the idea here is teamwork and empathy. And so today, if you are listening to this, I'm going to assume that you are probably a merchant, but maybe you're a developer. And I think on both sides of this conversation, I think you're going to find something helpful. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Mark onto the show. Mark, you want to give a brief introduction of who you are and what you do?
Hey, thank you for having me. My name's Mark Lewis, and I run an agency, Natalico. And our motto is empathy-focused development, where we really try to focus on like how the merchant is feeling, and not just on kind of like slinging out code, because particularly in e-commerce, we're working together basically every day with these merchants, and it's more of teamwork. We're on the same team as opposed to like one company and another company.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think the teamwork is important because ultimately, unless you are as a merchant a developer and a merchant in the same way, which there are those of you out there. The thing is there is so much to be gained by this partnering up and this teamwork, but it's a matter of empathy and just like you were saying there, because no matter where one lives geographically in the States, around the world, political views, religious views, pretty much anything else, I think empathy, trying to understand where other people are coming from, I think is a valuable perspective that we need to have in these type of communications, and especially here in a merchant to developer, merchant to an agency type of interaction.
Yeah, definitely. I've observed, particularly with e-commerce development, it seems to be a different beast than custom software development, because as the developer, what you're creating isn't the actual product. You're creating the product to sell the product. And if you get so focused on just creating, just pushing out code, and you forget like what the ultimate goal is to sell things online, you can get lost, and the merchant, will be freaking out about something that's really important to them, and you're just focusing on, maybe this inconsequential bug that they don't even know about. That's kind of theoretical, but yeah.
Well, but I think it goes back to an important point of communication. So I would say, merchant, are you communicating to the agency, to the developer, on a regular basis? And the problem is, I know it takes time, and I know for me this whole deal of time is pretty scarce. I mean, it's not like whether you're a merchant, developer, I mean, like anybody in this world. I'm sure there's some people that have plenty of time, but it seems like time is always a scarce resource. And so, but all that said, it's important to understand and value that other people are busy, have time, and have a lot of things to do with their time as well.
Yeah, definitely. And time with billable hours, also time is money. And then from the merchant side, they're very busy. Most merchants I've met are working 40 plus hours a week. They're not like slacking off. But what I've found in almost like training some of the merchants we work with is we equip them with the tools, like the communication tools they need, or we need for them to have so that they actually save time. And so, if, including a screenshot and just a few more details in some of the emails or issues that they report, it actually saves them more time, because otherwise we're going back and forth on email, and the issue gets strung out all the time.
It ends up taking longer to get this issue fixed. That really seems like it in everybody's mind should have not taken that long to do. So, and I think what would be interesting to take a look at just for a minute or two is the background of a developer. And I know not everybody fits into a specific mold. There's quite a few outside of this, but I think as a general whole, many developers are really focused on technical details, accuracy. Sometimes it's minutia, but getting stuff done right. And I think all of those are super good qualities to have. But I think they can cause some challenges because for a merchant, because the merchant maybe focuses on things a little more globally. So the merchant is looking at their website as a whole, this feature as a whole. And of course, again, the merchant doesn't have as much time. So, and I see this as from a perspective of me also being a developer. We have this, this trying to have this empathy, this understanding for who are we talking to? Do you have any thoughts along that line?
Yeah. I mean, developers tend to, come from a more detail-oriented background. They think very logically. It's like if then else, basically.
Right.
And so, maybe they'll get an email from the merchant, and the merchant is like, the checkout is down, the website's broken, and the developer might respond, I checked it, it's fine, and that may be true because the developer checked the checkout and is like, well, maybe the merchant saw a little issue with one customer.
Exactly.
But that kind of response of like, oh no, you're wrong, that doesn't go over well. Of
course,
if you can kind of cushion your response a little bit, it's like, oh, I checked something and it seems to be working, but maybe there is another issue that we can nail down. And that kind of thinking is hard for a lot of developers because it's not intuitive. It was certainly wasn't intuitive to me 10 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so understanding that many developers are in that very technical, very specific, detail oriented. And there's a reason, again, why they're often called software engineers. So it's obviously not them being a professionally licensed like a PE engineer, but it's still a lot of that same concept, that same thinking on a day-to-day basis. And so understand this is where many developers come from, and thus how do we interact with them? And so with that on one side, I think it'd be interesting, and I would think this hopefully will resonate with many people. The idea of a merchant, so we've looked at the developer, and I very much fit into that mold myself. But also looking at the merchant, and I would consider myself a quasi merchant, mostly selling on the digital side. But we have this aspect of who is the merchant. And one thing I can say straight off the bat is merchants are, I'm going to say 99 out of 100 times, super busy. There's a million and one things to do, and you only have time to do 100 of those things. It's a challenge to get it all done because there's another campaign you have to do. There's another bug you have to fix. There's another customer problem or customers emailing saying there's an issue on the website. And so I know that I believe is quite true about most merchants that I've worked with and kind of experienced that myself as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's basically an unlimited number of things that you could do to your website to, in new marketing campaigns. And a lot of the developers and project managers that work for me at Natalico actually used to work for former merchants. And so we really think about whether an issue we can remove or we can save the merchant time as opposed to kind of pushing things back on them. And if we suddenly add some sort of new requirement that takes them hours and hours to do, they just don't have time. So always be thinking about at the end of the day trying to save the merchant time and get the project done as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And also I think another aspect, merchants are rightly concerned with the stability of their website. I mean, so you have, obviously whoever you trust to build the website out, but you have to trust them that they're going to continue putting this food on your table, because the website, and I liked how you said at the beginning, the website is the gateway. It's the tool to help you sell things. And I think it's sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that. Developers gets in the weeds of, oh, this is fine. This is really not a big deal. But in the grand scheme of things, there are these little issues that add up to be big issues on the website. And I think that can be a point of frustration for merchants, is that the developer isn't always listening, or the agency isn't always listening to what they perceive as these small issues, though that get to be bigger issues as time goes on, or 1% 10 times really adds up.
Yeah, definitely. And the listening aspect, I think, is really important. Even over email, I think kind of metaphorical listening and making sure that you're really like documenting the merchant's concerns when they send them in, and you're taking them seriously, even though sometimes as the developer, you'll get something that it's like, all right, is that really a big deal? But like, it is a big deal to the merchant, and
Right.
how you respond to that, and ultimately how you prioritize that really matters, and making the merchant really feel like, all right, this is important, but we do have a million and one things, working with them to really understand their priority. If everything's urgent, nothing is urgent.
Exactly. And I 100% agree. 100% agree. And I think another aspect, and this has been kind of an awakening moment for me, especially as I have taken, again, a little bit of a merchant journey, is the issue about code quality. And I think it's so funny because I know developers, we often focus on that. And sometimes it's even used as a selling point. But ultimately, first, code quality is exceptionally nebulous. How can I say this person's code is better than this other person's code? I mean, it's hard, especially for someone who's not a developer. So understanding that a merchant, in my experience, and you probably are, a merchant would want sites that work over, and with sites that work with time and budget in mind, as opposed to perfect code quality. And it's kind of an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I think I've seen like a triangle of like speed, quality, price, and you can't have all three.
Exactly.
And I think like with almost everything you get as a developer and a merchant, you have to really think about all three of those and prioritize which is most important. And I think, particularly a lot of times on the initial building of a website, I think quality is one of the most important things because it's the foundation. But as you get kind of down the road, maybe there's like a little feature that you can do maybe twice as quick if you do it one way versus the other. And I think that oftentimes as a developer, we should give the merchants that option. It's like, okay, we can do this way, like 100% perfect way, or maybe we can do kind of this variation of it and give them control of whether, all right, we really, really want to push this hard, or okay, maybe this isn't so important. We can kind of like compromise, and compromise seems like a dirty word sometimes, but it's really important.
I understand. Absolutely. I 100% agree. And I think that's again where the communication comes back in. And the problem is, from the outset, communication is looked at as taking time, but ultimately I think it saves time in the long run. And that's been my experience, is that it's valuable in the long run.
Definitely. I think, we actually bill for communication because we have found that it saves on development time. If you have good upfront communication, you don't go back and forth so often. And once you start writing code, that's one of the most time consuming parts. And if you don't have a good communication up front, you'll write, if it doesn't matter if the code is perfect, if it's perfectly the wrong code, it accomplishes the wrong thing, it's a waste of time.
Exactly. And money. And, that's the problem, is money at the same time too. Exactly. So one other thing that I was just thinking through some of this stuff is, I think so we looked at the developer and how a lot of developers are very technically focused, are able to get some really great stuff done at a micro level. Obviously, that builds out to a macro level. But think in a lot of developers think in very structured terms, which is again is really good, and that's what builds a great website. On the other hand, though, merchants often think about time. They think about dollars. They think about not having that much time, and so ultimately, stuff can become a little more of a crisis than it needs to be, or that it's tempting to see it as it is at that moment in time. However, the one thing and I know there's a ton of similarities. We're all humans. There's a ton of similarities. But one thing that really stood out to me, though, is, and I think nobody likes to be blamed, and it's easy to for a developer to say, hey, why'd you change this? Or the merchant, this was built the wrong way, or that sort of thing, versus we're all in the same walk of life. Of course, we all make mistakes. I make plenty of them myself. But working to avoid the blame game, and how can we work together as this team? Because in my experience, working together as this team, this cohesive unit, as the merchant brings such valuable perspectives to the table, and the developer does too. So we can work together on this. And I think overall, it creates a better product, a much better product.
Yeah, definitely. I think, the agency and the merchant are a team. And I use the term we most of the time. And when I say we, I'm referring to agency and merchant, because we are building the website together.
Right.
We're not just like a builder, but like we're part of the team. And a lot of times smaller merchants, like they hire an agency because they don't even need like a full-time developer. Right. So basically the agency is like a fractional developer, but you're pretty embedded in the merchant's team, and you're yes. going back and forth. Like, most of probably your clients too, like most of our clients we're communicating with on a daily basis, multiple times a day. And maybe we're not in the office with them, but like we have the same goals in mind,
Exactly. Absolutely. I 100% agree. Yes. Okay. So as I always like to do with this podcast, I always like to make it practical. And I think there's been some practical points already that I know I can do better at, and hopefully is helpful already. But let's just try to boil this down into just a few points that I think can really make a big difference. And I think I'll go first with one of these. And from a developer's perspective, and I would probably say the number one thing, it's probably, if it's not, it's pretty close to that, that will improve the relationship is information. So having this information, hey, the website is down, is one thing, but is it a 502 error? Is it is the page just locked up? Is the drop-down menus don't work? Are they getting a not secure error? What kind of information can you do to help get the developer to as quick of a resolution as possible with given the information or even the crisis that is currently at hand?
Yeah. And particularly one of the easiest ways for merchant or anyone to like communicate that kind of issue is a screenshot. Because a lot of times like a picture's worth 1,000 words. And
exactly,
you'll get some message with like there's an error on the website, and I'm like, all right, send me a screenshot of the entire screen, and you look in the browser and it's like the URL is wrong or something like that. And there's just so many details if you have like a visual picture of the issue, that like it saves time, because you literally take a screenshot, go. And in that vein too, we use a tool called Loom, which is really easy to do videos, screen capture videos. And so, sometimes issues like can't be illustrated very well on a single picture. So we've told a lot of merchants, hey, use this tool. It uploads it super like quick, and now we can see, oh, you went through these steps in the checkout. You got there, instead of them like writing out like a, 1-page document of basically describing every little, checkbox and, thing that they did. We can just see, and then we can reproduce the issue right there.
So the name of this is it a browser extension?
Yeah.
Or is it an app?
Loom. I think it's loom.com. Yep.
Lume, how do we spell?
LOOM.com.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yes. Well, in the day of modern techno science, everything has a different spelling, and it's not necessarily always the normal spelling. So yeah, okay.
Yes.
So yeah, okay, very good. So that's excellent. And that would save a lot of time in having to write stuff up, try to document stuff, and because again, if the customer's information is already populated or the merchant is trying to replicate this error, just taking a video of that, it just that is really, that makes things a lot more simple.
Yeah, and on the development end too, often we use like the videos and the screenshots to almost, if a merchant reports an issue and we can't reproduce it, then we kind of illustrate, okay, here's the steps that we did. It
Right.
worked. We're not saying like you're wrong that the website is broken, but we're not able to reproduce it, and here's the steps that we did, and then they can see it as the merchant and say, okay, oh, you did this a little different. This is what I did, and it.
Oh,
and
interesting.
It worked.
Yes.
Yeah, it saves a lot of time.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And I think ultimately, I think merchants, one thing that's easy to forget is that the first thing a developer is going to do is try to reproduce whatever this problem is. So it might be as simple as going to the website and there's a 502 error. The site is completely cold, hard down. Or it could be like what we're talking about. There's this, the checkout, and there's something really strange that happens every 5 checkouts when you use a specific zip code and you order this specific product, and so, but if possible, these steps to reproduction makes life a lot easier all the way around, in saving round trips. But unfortunately, that can be some of the hardest part of, honestly, solving the entire problem is reproducing it. Often, in my experience, it seems like the actual fix is usually, not always, a small fraction of the time.
Yeah, definitely. The most frustrating thing for a developer is when you can't reproduce an issue. Like,
Right.
it's real, but like you said, it only happens under very specific conditions. A customer reports it, and you just go back and forth. I mean, you can literally like burn hours and hours just trying to
Yes.
get the issue itself to see it so that you can fix it. And yes.
Exactly.
So whatever everyone can do to kind of communicate, okay, how can you reproduce this issue, saves so
Yes.
much time.
Absolutely, 100% in agreement there. And so I think the final aspect of this story is empathy. And just like we opened it up with, is realizing that developers are humans, merchants are human. We're all human. And having, of course, our good days and our bad days. A website being down would qualify for a bad day, but having this empathy for all parties involved, and then being able to become this team. And I've seen just how powerful when these relationships can work out well, some really great stuff happens.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of the most rewarding things about doing what I do, and I'm sure you're the same thing, is just working with these merchants that really care about their products, they care about their customers, and they're really great people to work with. A lot of them are entrepreneurs. They had blood, sweat, and tears to start the business. They've probably gotten it to a pretty good place, at this point. And they're really great people. And
Yes,
sometimes during Black Friday or the holiday season, things can get a little more stressful. If the server's down or the checkout's broken.
Yes.
But like you said, at the end of the day, we're all people, and we're trying to accomplish the same thing.
Exactly. Absolutely. Well, I think this has been excellent, Mark, and I appreciate you taking the time to come onto the show, and thank you for sharing your insight, your experience, and your empathy, in this situation. And I really appreciate you taking the time to do it. I hope it's been valuable to all of our listeners. It's been valuable to me as well. So I said today that we'd make this just a little bit shorter, ringing in the new year, the new episode. I'm really excited about what we have coming up. Here's some really great interviews in the pipeline. So please do take a couple of seconds and subscribe to the podcast. It's really easy on Apple and Google, Spotify, Stitcher. So wherever it is, please make sure you subscribe. Even better, would really make my day is if you would want to leave me a 5-star review for this podcast. That would that would be like a Christmas present. I know we just celebrated Christmas, but that would be like a Christmas present to me to rate this show 5 stars. So anyways, feel free to reach out with me with any thoughts, comments, suggestions. My email is joseph@swiftauto.com, joseph@swiftauto.com. I look forward to hearing from you as my desire is to make this show excellent, informative, and really about these actionable insights that you can take home, put into practice today, and hopefully either today or within this next year, transform this business, this website, whatever you are running, transform it and take it up to the next level. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.